Okay, so part one of the review was the first two learning targets. So these are the last two. We spent a lot of time talking about the three different colonial regions. So make sure that you know these backward and forward. Remember, you got to know which colonies were in New England, which ones were in the middle, and which ones were in the south, because there will be questions where it won't ask you which region; it'll ask you which colony. So you may look at the question and know that I'm talking about the southern region, but southern's not an answer choice. Georgia is, so you've got to know that Georgia is part of the South. So be careful on that and be prepared. So for New England, remember they are up north, so they have poor soil and a really bad climate. So not a great place to grow crops. So instead, they get their money from fur, shipbuilding, timber, which is just a fancy word for trees and wood. England had wiped out their forests, and so timber was really important to them. So they would ship a lot of trees, wood back to England. Shipbuilding, fishing was also really important because they were right there on the ocean. Over and over and over again, all throughout U.S. history, really, you're going to hear about the importance of waterways, the importance of rivers, the importance of the ocean. I cannot stress that to you enough. Living on the ocean and living next to a water source was so important for people. And not just for drinking water. Obviously, you can't drink ocean water, so it wasn't that. It was just that it made it so much easier to transport things, to trade, to get from one place to another. So rivers and oceans are huge for trade, both for the colonists and for Native Americans. Um, the other big thing that you need to remember about New England is they are very, very religious. So here's the irony in the whole New England story. We know that the Pilgrims moved to America. They ended up settling in Massachusetts, which is in New England, for religious freedom. They were tired of being told how to worship. And what's crazy is that Massachusetts became very religious and very, very religious and very strict. And they ended up not being very tolerant at all to other religions. So they moved to Massachusetts to practice their own religion, but then when other people came, they forced them to practice the same religion that they believed in. So they ended up being pretty strict and not tolerant at all. The Puritans are the ones that we're talking about, and they're the ones, this is where the Salem witch trials happened. This was in Massachusetts. Also, remember we talked about New England is where your schools are going to be. That's where kids in the American colonies are going to go to school. And the reason why is because they're going to learn how to read so that they can read the Bible. Again, very religious, very strict, and not very tolerant in New England, which is what led to Salem witch trials and things like that. The middle is extremely different. They are very diverse and they are very tolerant. So you have a lot of people from different colonies. So lots of people from, you might have Dutch and French and all these people come in. And then you also had people that were of different religions, all lived here together and got along just fine. So we have the bread basket. It's called the bread basket in the middle colonies because of the grains that they were able to grow. Also, they made money off of livestock. And then New York and Philadelphia are major ports. Again, a port is, a place where ships can park and unload and load back up. So again, waterways, very important. That's the reason New York City is such a huge city today. Philadelphia is a huge city today because they are on the water. Last but not least, the South. They're just known for cash crops, really. They're very spread out because they live on these giant plantations. They're not very religious, which again is crazy that New England was known for being very religious and the South wasn't, because today it's quite the opposite. New England is known for not being religious really at all, and the South is known for being very religious. So times have definitely changed, but during this time, they were primarily focused on making money from agriculture. And that is what brought in a huge influx of African slaves. The other colonies may have had African people working there, and a few places may have had slaves, but this was very, very concentrated in the South. And so that brings us to our last learning target. I can explain the causes behind the institution of slavery being introduced in North America and the harsh realities of the Middle Passage. You have to understand what triangle trade is, okay? So you have to understand what's being shipped from each of these continents and to the other places. So first of all, North America, Europe, and Africa are your three continents involved, okay? So we have raw materials coming from North America. Again, that's why we went. That's why we wanted to colonize there. We wanted to use their resources. We would send those resources to Europe where they would manufacture goods, where they would make products. And then we would take those products like guns and different types of, rum and things like that, and we would ship them down to Africa. And we would give those goods to the Africans so that in return they would give us slaves, and then the slaves would go back to North America, and they were the ones who would get the resources from North America so that we could ship them to Europe. So you see, it's just this constant cycle. Make sure you know the three continents. Make sure you know what each of them sold. Also, last but not least, remember that this green arrow, the journey from Africa to North America, is called the Middle Passage. And don't forget how absolutely horrible it was. And understand that these were people who, most of them were living just normal lives. They were kidnapped in their own homes and were sold into this slave trade. So please make sure that you're looking at all your notes, that you are studying. You do have a test on Friday. If you have questions, email me. But like I said, I will be back on Thursday, and we will review on Thursday, and then the test is on Friday. Okay? Alrighty, let me know if you have questions, guys.